Yesterday I shared some images from Bing Image Creator where I was trying to create images of ouroboros, a mythological endless serpent that encircles the world. It's known in Norse mythology. I don't know what other mythologies it may be known in. I found out about it because I ordered some merchandise for Christmas from a website called Odin's Treasures, which has Norse themed gifts. But today I wanted to share some of the reject images because I feel it's reassuring in some ways about how AI is not as good as we think it is. A lot of these images are really beautiful and mystical and in a way inspiring, and yet when you look closely at them, they have substantial deformities. Multiple heads is common, even though I was saying not multiple heads, and apparently Bing can't understand not. I don't know, maybe the serpent could have multiple heads and tails. That doesn't mean, I suppose, that it isn't the mythological creature. Anyway, this one has multiple tails. This snake has several sort of proto heads and something that looks like maybe a squid attached to it. This snake has a detached, fully connected ring, which doesn't seem to be connected with the rest of its body. And then it has two tails. It's not clear which one is attached to the head. And then there are some other sort of random rings just floating in space. This one looks more convincing at first, but when you look more closely, you notice that it has fins around on its back, which I guess for a fantasy serpent it's okay to have fins. But then if you look at the bottom, there are pieces of its body that branch off. And also, just in front of the mouth, there's a huge fringe coming out of the body, which, snakes don't have fringes, actually. This one has a couple of detached pieces at the bottom. And then it has a squid and a fish attached to it, and a number of fringes. Although, it's sort of convincing as an endless serpent. This one also has a detached ring around it, which sort of looks like a serpent but isn't connected, and it also has a worm growing out of it. This one also has a detached ring, although that could be just a decoration. But it also seems to have a detached tail on the sort of around 7 o'clock. This one also, the pieces don't really seem to be connected to each other. This one also seems to have some completely disconnected pieces. This one is not entirely clear that it has a head. It sort of does. This one has a strange nasal deformity. This one has two heads connected to each other, and then the rest of it seems to all be detached from the two heads, as far as I can see. This one seems to be a whole nest of serpents and some disconnected pieces. In this one, the main serpent on the left seems to fork into two pieces, sort of in the center there. And then there seems to be a disconnected piece on the right with a detached head just sort of hanging there. This one also seems to have disconnected pieces, but it also seems to have vomited a piece. This one looks like one really tiny serpent with a couple of disconnected rings. Yeah, this one also has sort of a detached ring and then something that looks like an embryo in the middle, or a tadpole. This one seems to have at least 4 heads. This one has 2 heads. And this one has 3 heads. This one has 2 heads. This one also has 2 heads. This one I think has 7 heads, and 2 of the heads are on the same body. I found this one really tantalizing because it has really pretty patterns, but it does have 2 heads, and it also doesn't seem like all the body parts are connected to a head. This one has 3 heads. This one has a really nice world in the center, which was good, but it does have 4 heads, and one of them really looks embryonic. This one has detached pieces and a couple of birds, which is interesting. But the thing is, some of the detached pieces reminded me of the dead ant embryos that I get when I use the ant baits in my cottage. This one has 2 heads and at least 1 detached ring. It's sort of funny how some of these, you look at them and they almost create an optical illusion as if it were making sense when it really doesn't. This one has 2 heads, and also the smaller one has some intriguing branches. It has a fork near the head, and then it has another fork farther down on the body, so that it seems to be kind of a detached loop in a way. This one has 2 heads and 3 tails, I think. This one has 5 heads. Well, I'm starting to wonder whether this serpent could have multiple heads. I don't guess there's no reason why it couldn't. This one certainly creates the impression of endless. This one looks superficially sort of good, but if you look carefully around the edges, there are like 6 detached heads that kind of look like baby kittens nursing on the main snake. I don't think that's right. This one has a whole bunch of detached heads, or maybe they're tails. It certainly looks endless, that it does. But the heads are weird. This one has 3 heads, though at least it's not gross. So anyway, even though these images are sort of interesting and some of them are very beautiful, there are some serious cognitive problems with these snakes, and you can really sort of see the computer just kind of doing random things with images.